Hello and welcome to the Self Storage Made Simple podcast. I am your host, Thaddeus Campbell. Really excited today to be joined by somebody who is a titan in this asset class, somebody who is universally well respected. I'm not going to say how long he's been in the asset class because we try not to date people, but a couple decades plus in self-storage and just universally respected human being. So really, and we didn't just bring him on because he has the best last name in the world. We brought him on because he has a wealth of knowledge to share with us. Terry Campbell, want to thank you so much for spending a little time with us.
Well, I want to thank you for having me on here, Thaddeus. And it's okay. You could tell people how long I've been in the business. It doesn't bother me. You see these Arctic blonde hair. Some people call them gray. That's I've earned those. I've earned those.
Listen, I got you going. I'm white, so I think you know why I'm white and you're not, because you've been in storage the whole time and it's such a great industry. I always start the same way with people. I always ask them because it is such a cool industry and it's so unique from me. For someone who's an outsider to this, I've been in storage now for 3+ years. Such a different group of human beings in this asset class. I always like, how the heck did you get into self-storage? Because it's not a normal place for people to end up.
Well, it's kind of interesting for me because I was a drafter for many years with a company and back in my where I grew up, and the self storage building manufacturer Betco was in Statesville, North Carolina. And I knew some folks there. I was a drafter learning AutoCAD, and I went to the local community college to learn AutoCAD because the company I was at was moving that way. And while I was there, the instructor actually was the guy implementing AutoCAD at Bedco. So I learned from him. He asked me if I wanted to do some part-time work because that drafting AutoCAD stuff came pretty natural, and I really enjoyed it, and I was pretty good at it. And he asked me if I would come and do some part-time work for them. And I said, sure, because at the time my wife was we were expecting our first daughter. And like every penny I can get that I could make, I was trying to do. So I went to work with them part-time doing some drawings. And wasn't much longer after that, I ended up just going there full-time. And that's how I got in the industry. January 3rd, 1995. There, I just dated myself really
Love
bad.
it.
So that means January will be 30 years.
I was in the middle of my junior year of college.
Yeah, young punk. But that's how I got in the industry, and I grew up there. I was 28 years old when I started there, and I grew up in the industry as well. It's where I was when I invested in my very first self storage facility as well. But that's how I got into the industry, was because I was a drafter learning AutoCAD.
You were on the very front edge of AutoCAD, by the way. I happened to date somebody in college who went on to an architecture degree, and that was still a very new technology at that point.
Yep. AutoCAD version 10 was one of the first ones that they say version 10, but I don't remember one before that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So listen, you talked about that and you made that transition very early. What was it about storage that made you not just want to work doing drafting and working with Betco, but get invested in it?
Well, I noticed that, especially as I grew in the company and moved into different positions and was more customer facing at different points in time, I saw how many of these people I helped make rich by providing self-storage buildings, and seeing the success of these folks and how the business was relatively simple. I mean, I don't want to, oversimplify it or make it seem like it's so easy, but at the time it was easier than it is now, I think. But, you put up units, there's empty garages, you have a one piece of moving equipment, that's the roll-up door. People move in, your leases are 30 days long, and it just seemed like these people. One of the things I noticed was that they didn't just do one. Once they did one, they would do another, then another, then another. And I saw the kind of money these guys were making. And the more I was involved with the customers at different points, I saw how good of a business it was. And when I saw how good of a business it was, I was like, I really want to invest in this, but I don't have the money. We're still relatively young. We got two young kids, and My first facility I invested in, I refinanced our home and took out enough equity to invest in our first facility. And since then, it's been I don't know how many we've sold a portfolio. My wife and I are invested in 11 locations now, so it's you don't stop at one, and it's helped us to put two daughters through college and also to pay for two weddings, 6 months apart, I might say too. So
One got the itch, and the other one had to follow along right behind, huh?
yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question here. What is it about storage that really, because you said it, like people don't tend to own one, right? They own multiple facilities. What is it about this investment in this asset class that makes that so prevalent?
I think there's several reasons. One is it's just they're so low touch for the most part. Once they move in, they usually stay for X number of months, depending on where you're at or what they're doing. It may be 12 months, it may be 8 months, it may be years, it may be decades. But it's less hands-on than a lot of other things are. And one of my favorite things about it is that you have 30-day leases. So if you've reached the point you're added a certain size unit, give them 30 days notice, you're raising the price. That's one of my favorite parts about it, other than the things about it being more hands off. You can hire a third party to handle it for you. There's just and being real estate based, it kind of hedges against inflation as well, having the real estate.
I think that's something that's so interesting for me. And what I've noticed in storage is there tends to be meat on the bone in the asset class in a way that allows you to kind of stick to the part of it that you like, right? If what you like is going and finding a new asset to buy, you're not an operational guy. There's those people out there, right? You have your copper storage management. If you want to go reach, you've got CubeSmart or Extra Space or Public, or so you can kind of fit. If on the flip side, if you're an operational guy, there you can run the thing because it's not a heavy lift like a multifamily or an office space would be.
Yep, and there's so many ways to actually get into the business. Obviously, building is one that takes the longest. You got to have the most patience, and it works. Obviously, you have to build new facilities. Conversions, that's another way. Conversions are one of my favorites because you got an existing building. You're not taking all the building risk. Sometimes you can have that facility converted during the wintertime when the crews don't want to be working outside
Yeah.
on buildings. And, if it's in the right location, you just ask yourself, would I build one there if there wasn't an empty building? And if the answer is yes, it might be a good one. But I think my favorite way of getting into the business is a value add acquisition. It's faster. Typically, you can make a profit faster. More people can get into it that way. There's different options. You got smaller facilities you can buy and do a turnaround. And we've experienced some situations where we did fantastic. There was one that we bought in. What was it? It was, I think, late 19. We paid 1.375 million for this facility. Definitely a value add situation. We went in, we incorporated our management model, and about 18 months later, I think it appraised for 4.1 million. So, like I said, that's my favorite model, is to do a value add acquisition. That's not necessarily a typical situation. But there was also the COVID factor involved in that timing as well, which made it just that much better. But it's still a good option. But building for the long haul, I've been involved in builds. I'm own a facility, or I'm a part owner in a facility in Kissimmee that we built from the ground up, big 3-story, and it took a little while, but that thing is a monster cash cow right now. So having a little bit of each is a good mixture.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit about that. You mentioned the 3-story and talk, 95 to 2024. This is not your granddad's storage anymore, right? Like what we see come out now, vastly different than what 1995 looked like for a self-storage facility. Talk about that a little bit about that evolution, and maybe if you have some insight on why that happened.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you got the technology for one thing. You know, it's always evolving. People are always looking for ways to lower their OPEX. Technology is definitely a way that's being done to lower that OPEX. Aesthetics, people are more interested in the looks of the facility. I think, you know, because the majority of the tenants are women, or the majority of the people renting are women,
Yep.
if it looks really good, it looks nice, they're going to equate that with safety a lot of times. So they want to rent where it's safe. They may not be the one out there unloading the truck, but if they rent the unit, they may be thinking in the back of their mind, you know, I'm going to be out there by myself one day and I want to be somewhere that's safe. So, you know, I think there's a lot of reasons, a lot of areas people are building closer to their customer now, if at all possible. So you're building in areas that the municipality, the town, the zoning is requiring it to be a whole different type of look.
Yeah.
Again, the technology that's out there now, different ways of, you know, remote management is a big thing these days as well, but definitely a lot different. But there's also some differences. I did a keynote speech for the Tennessee Association a year and a half, 2 years ago, and my theme was a trip down memory lane. I went back to when I started in '95 and looked at the cost of a self-storage, single-story self-storage facility, and it was in the $4 to $5 range. That was delivered and installed. Well, maybe not delivered, but that was materials and labor, etc. That
Yep.
was between $4 and $5. At
A
the
square
time I
foot.
did that presentation, it was, you know, 15 to 17 bucks a square feet. You know, almost four times the cost. But one of the things that I also mentioned is as I asked my friend Poppy Behrens, who was running the mini storage messenger and does the almanac. I asked her to look back at '95. What were the rates back then? And she actually had to go to, I think, to a storage unit and pull out paper archives. And she
Yep.
looked it up for me. And the rates that were being paid for, you know, the tenants were renting for back then versus what they were when I gave this presentation was about double. So your costs are four times, your rates are double. How do you make up that difference? And, you know, it's through things like technology and being able to leverage that, being able to use tenant insurance and tenant protection plans also as a way to increase your revenue and just finding ways to lower your expenses.
I was going to mention that, and obviously, what you're doing now, we'll get to that as we go in the insurance world. Not necessarily tenant insurance so much, but we're going to discuss that. I want to talk a little bit about, you know, you were at Betco, you were able to amass a portfolio that you were either owned yourself or invested in with others, and ended up going into the management side of it with if you're not familiar with copper storage management, you know, Bob Copper obviously was very well known for doing feasibility studies, but branched out into doing third party management for people, and you joined that team. What led to that, and what was it about that appealed to you as a way you wanted to go?
Well, kind of what led to that is, you know, my 20 years at Betco, I left there, went to Live Oak Bank and started their self-storage lending team. I was there for a little over 7 years. We actually crossed the $1 billion mark as I was leaving, or was about to cross the $1 billion mark as I was leaving. And I had reached a point, we were kind of, I use this term loosely, we were kind of at cruising altitude at that point. You know, we built a team, we're doing a great job, we're doing a lot of loans for self storage, mostly SBA. And I'd kind of, I was a little burned out. It was time for something different. Well, I was already an investor with Bob. I'd known him for many years. And, you know, we've been friends for years. And they asked me, hey, I had mentioned to them I was kind of burnt out and thinking about doing something different. And so, well, why don't you come on over here and be CEO and partner? And I said, you know, that's one segment of the industry that I'd like to know more about. because I knew the building and construction side, the finance side, and now learning the operations and management side was something that I was interested in doing. I wanted to learn that aspect. If nothing else, because I am an investor in facilities and I want to understand what we need to be doing and maybe what we need to be doing different and how can we maximize our returns. So that was what led to me going over there.
It interests me so much, and I'm always amazed by this. You're 27 years of experience in the industry, and all of a sudden you decide to go do something that you're not familiar with. Where's that
Yeah.
mindset come from? Because, quite frankly, most people are wired the opposite way of that,
Right.
right? They're completely scared of change and want to stick with the lane they're in. So, how does Terry Campbell say, hey, man, I want to go learn something completely different?
I just had a desire to learn it. I just wanted to understand it. The old saying, the only constant is change. Well, I just felt like it was time for another change. I was, if you don't risk it, what is it? No risk it, no biscuit. So I wanted to stretch out, expand my knowledge, and learn as much as I could about the industry. I've been in it a long time, and I read books. And by different authors in the industry. I listen to podcasts. No matter how long you've been around, you can always learn something new. And I thought no better way to learn more about the operations side than to jump feet first into it by joining the company and doing that.
I love the fact too, because it's not just a willingness to go learn something new, but a confidence that, because they didn't bring you in on the ground floor,
That's
right? They,
right.
they brought you in with a title that carries a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
So, where's that confidence come from to go take over an operation, even though maybe it wasn't your necessarily your exact wheelhouse?
Well, I've always been able to, I've always had a knack for being able to build a good team. To me, that's the fact. I mean, if you can be a good leader, you find the right people to put around you and get the right folks in place. That's what counts. And then you listen to them, and you don't put them in place and tell them what to do. You just make sure that bases are being covered, holes are being filled, and that in general, that you've got things covered, like making sure that you've got all the proper insurances in place, making sure you got good SOPs in place, making sure that you've got all the things necessary for the business to run. Because not only are you running your own business, you're running someone else's business, and they're your customer, and you're dealing with their customer. So this is one of the most in-depth roles that you probably could be in when you're managing somebody's business and their customers as well.
I'm interested to talk a little bit. I don't know, 60, 70,000 self-storage facilities in the country. And, it is 10, 15, 20 years ago, 90%, 85% mom and pop owned. That started to shift a little bit. We're now getting to that place where, maybe not a fully adult industry, but certainly well into adolescence now, where you're starting to see more of that conglomeration, the Publix and the Cube Smarts and the Extra Spaces and the big REITs and even non-REITs like Storage Mart starting to have a bigger foothold. How important has third-party management been to that kind of conglomeration, to that single owners owning 50, 60, 100 facilities?
I think it's I think it's pretty important. I think it's pretty big because trying to scale it themselves is going to be a little more difficult than giving it to somebody that knows how to do it, who has the capabilities, has the procedures, has the relationships, has the efficiencies to make that happen. So, some people, when they grow that big, it makes sense to do it themselves if they've got the right people in place, the right procedures in place. But if you've got somebody that, has a track record that can do it, that has done it forever, like the facility that I'm a partner in Kissimmee, Extra Space manages it for us.
Yep.
And it was that way, from the get go. That way, Extra Space managed it before I went to Copper, or I'd have been after that one. But they've done a great job, and that group has built a few others, and they're able to have Extra Space just pick them up and run with it. And I think another thing with that is once a third party management company is in a market, if they're the only one there, it helps the owners to be more profitable because
Yeah.
one REIT's not fighting against the other, and you know what's going on in that market, and you're able to control it a little better.
I was going to say that as a, for me working on the development side and trying to identify markets, it's scary when I think of if I hire CubeSmart to manage a facility where there's an extra space down the road, where because it's natural to compete and you don't want to put yourself in that situation where, I would always ask developers when I first got into the industry, who are you going to use? And they would say, well, it sort of depends. I'm gonna go market by market because there's going to be different markets where different third party management platforms have an advantage there.
For sure. Absolutely.
So I want to go back a little bit and rewind to the live oak part because this is something that as I've had people on the podcast that have been in this industry for as long as you frequently talk about, I just talked to Michael Pagoda, whose dad Maurice has been in, was
I saw that.
managing and building in Michigan in the 80s. And it's a very different atmosphere now going to a bank to get a loan on a self-storage facility than it was when you first got into the industry. Talk a little bit about the evolution of the asset class and how, the profile of self-storage in banking has changed dramatically.
Well, in the early days, they still considered it speculative. And, they're used to having shopping centers, and you already have tenants lined up so that when you build it, that, it's going to be full and it's going to be rented. So self-storage it was a new concept. And they were like, wait a minute, you're going to have 300 empty units when you open and you don't have any tenants signed up already. No, this is too risky. This is crazy. So it had to earn its reputation. It had to earn its stripes, so to speak, that it's not just build it and they will come, but if you've done your homework and there's a market for, and then, started getting people doing feasibilities that became experts at feasibility studies. And the track record just kept building and building and building. And now you have banks fighting over self-storage loans. And even when I started at Live Oak, I started the team there, some banks still looked at it that way. A lot of banks were concerned about like a value add acquisition. It's like,
Yeah.
Wait a minute, this thing doesn't cash flow. I don't know that we want to finance that. Well, okay, it doesn't cash flow now, but it will. And here's why. Here's why, it's not being run properly.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the unit mix is wrong. You need to change some units. Maybe they're 40% below market value. There's just a ton of reasons that a value add can be fixed. And we knew that, we understood that, but still, even then, when I started at the bank, banks didn't get that, and they didn't understand it, so they wouldn't lend on it. That's one of the things that gave us a real leg up as a lender specializing in that, in self-storage, because we really understood the asset. They really do. I mean, they've had 9 years, almost 10 years now of experience at Live Oak. So they've been through different cycles. The lending team, the credit team, everybody there understands the industry. We even we would track the feasibility study versus performance and saw how they lined up. And almost always the feasibility studies were more conservative than the actual performance, which is what you wanted to see. So as long as I was there, we never had a loan go bad. And as far as I know, they've never had a loan go bad since I left. So it's
Talked to Ann a couple months ago. That track record is still alive.
Good. That's good. So it's been a lot of changes over the years, and those are the things that I've seen and experienced with it.
So what was it about Live Oak where they saw a little bit ahead of the curve? Do you know what made them identify this asset class? Because they really were kind of on the forefront of really diving in, and they I guess they prioritized a good chunk of their investment into that space.
Yeah, Live Oak's model was always they're going to be verticalized. So you're going to have a vertical and you're going to specialize in it. You're going to know it inside and out, and you're going to go out to market and you're going to lend to them. And you're not only just going to lend to them, you're going to offer advice. You're going to follow along. You're going to see how they're performing. And I think when I started, I think I was the 9th vertical. They had pharmacy, veterinarians, several different ones. And I think I was the ninth one. But the way they used to go about it, I assume they still do the same, is they look and see, okay, what on the SBA list has the lowest defaults out there. And when they started looking at self storage, that was one of the, if not the top, it was one of the top businesses for the lowest defaults. So they started doing their homework, they started researching it, doing white papers, going to trade shows, that sort of thing. And I remember meeting some of the folks years ago at a trade show, and suddenly I got a call out of the blue. They said, I've had two people say that we should reach out to you to come and start our team. And I'm like, I'm not a lender, I'm not a banker, I'm not a finance guy. I said, we don't want that. We want somebody that understands the business, knows how to go to market, knows who the players are. We'll teach you the banking side, you teach us self-storage. It worked
Love
out
it.
pretty good.
Worked out all right. So I'm going to ask a quick question because we got 5 minutes left. This half hour always go by so fast. But you talked about going to trade shows. You've been in this industry for a while. Why is it that it's such a cool industry? Why is there just so much camaraderie and people just care for each other in a really genuine way?
I think a big reason is most of the people in this industry are not competitors. Your market is 3 to 5 miles, and you're not really competing with each other because you're not going to build another facility knowingly in somebody else's market. And it's just, other than that, I don't know. It's just, there's such a broad spectrum. I think this might be it. There's such a broad spectrum of people, types of backgrounds. I've dealt with people that are bankers and lawyers and dentists and doctors, and on the other end, farmers, people who work on the factory floor, grocery store managers, and everybody in between that has gotten into this business and were able to take on a shoestring and make themselves financially secure and independent, financially independent. But I think those two things, there's such a broad variety of people, and
Yeah.
because you're really not competitors. I mean, some people are, and some people act like they are, but for the most part, everybody tries to help each other. Everybody offers advice. They share information, and it's just I've never seen anything else like it.
I've been to trade shows for many different industries, and when you walk around an SSA or an ISS show and you see the genuine friendships, the conversations in the hallways, forget about the professional presentations, which are amazing, in the trade show floor, but it's what happens off the trade show floor that is just so different than anything else I've ever seen. And fingers crossed it stays that way forever because it really is a special industry. As we're wrapping up, Terry Campbell is now working in insurance and bringing insurance to the self-storage space specifically for a company that you're working with now. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing and why people want to get a hold of you in this space.
Gotcha. I'm with Johnson Insurance Services. Johnson is a 109-year-old agency. They're in my hometown that I grew up in, Mocksville, North Carolina. And it's kind of funny because one of the former owners was my wife's elementary school teacher and my oldest daughter's AP class teacher.
Nice.
And their
Small
son,
town living right there.
I'm telling you, their son bought the agency, and I met their son at a CEO peer group that I was attending when I was at Copper. And we come to find out, wait a minute, we're from the same place. And, the bells went off, and I'm like, you look just like your mom. She can't deny you. And so, we hit it off. And a few months ago, well, maybe it was May, I don't remember, May, June, they reached out and said, hey, we're really wanting to get into the self-storage business and would like to pick your brain a little bit. Well, they picked my brain for a little while, and then they convinced me to join them and come out of my retirement that I started in January, which turned out to be a sabbatical. And basically starting a vertical here, just like I did at Live Oak Bank, specializing in self-storage. And we provide all the insurance, property, casualty, all the other specialty type of insurance. Well, if you want to call it specialty, customer goods liability, sale and disposal, just making sure that people are properly covered. So having the perspective I do from different roles and from an owner and investor. I can make suggestions, review their policies, see how they look. Are you adequately covered? Having been in the building business, I know that I see a lot of them that are way underinsured
Yep.
because prices have gone up so much, and
Yep.
educating them on that, educating them on why you need customer or sale and disposal insurance, and why you need these things, and just making sure that they're right. And usually when I'm having conversations, we talk about other things as well that I can offer thoughts on that don't necessarily pertain to
To
insurance, but
insurance.
it's almost like a consultative role. But I've been here just a little over 2 months. It's been overwhelming. I really really focus on customer service. I'm actually here in the home office. I work remotely about an hour away at home, and I've been in the home office today talking with two of the owners, and we're talking about the procedures to continue to make customer service top notch. I mean, last week um, we bound a policy for someone, a friend of mine who's a business broker selling a facility, called me or emailed me one night, and it was about 10:30 at night. I read the email. I called him up. I said, "You got to be kidding. You got to close in a week, in 1 week." Okay. Normally, it takes a couple of weeks to get carriers to turn around quotes and so forth. But I went down to my office then at 10:30 at night, sent him the application and said, "Get it done." And he did. Long story short, we bound that project in 1 week.
Nice.
So customer service is top of mind for us. Obviously we want all the business we can get, but we want to provide the customer service. We want to offer value added services and things like that. So that's what I'm doing now. And it's
Especially
been fun.
timely right now with,
Yes.
recently Helene and Milton, and listen, as self-storage developers and owners, it's a line item right now that is becoming something that you really have to keep an eye on. If somebody wants to get a hold of Terry Campbell and talk about their insurance needs, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way is probably just to call or text me. I don't mind giving my number out because I want to talk to you.
It's
It's
going to be scrolling under the screen here. We got it.
yeah.
We'll put it out there for them.
All right. It's 704-437-4322. And if you want to email me, it's Terry, Terry, at gojohnsonins.com. So reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Johnson's website. I'm not too hard to find, and I'd love to talk to you.
If you have a hard time finding Terry, get a hold of me because I'm easy to find too, and I'll get you in touch with him. Terry, listen, we went a little over, which I try really hard not to do because I try to respect people's time. I have to really thank you because I had to reschedule this meeting a couple times. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and hopefully sometime we can get back on and do it again.
I really appreciate it, Thaddeus. It's been great, and I hope we get to do it again sometime too.
Hey, appreciate all of you guys for watching the Self Storage Made Simple podcast. That's it for this week. I want to thank my friends at PropRise who continue to sponsor the show, outpacing the self-storage market by supercharging your deal flow. Check out PropRise at proprise.io. We appreciate those guys greatly. Terry, have a great day, and everyone, we'll see you guys next week.